You are always innately good enough as a human being, but how you're showing up might need an upgrade, and that's okay. Like, you are worthy and deserving and all of that in terms of your enoughness, but your skill set and how you operate and show up in relationships, business, and everything else, you got to stay on your toes. You have to become better and continue that process. And there's no finish line.
Welcome to the Superhuman Life. I'm your host, Frank Rich, and this is the only podcast in the world dedicated to helping men break free from the shackles of addiction through the power of faith and fitness. It is our goal with every episode to help you take back control and rebuild your body, mind, and spirit. And we do so by bringing you real and raw conversations with people just like you, aiming to find their place in this world while dealing with the everyday struggles and battles that we all face. Now, it is my belief that we were all created for a specific purpose. And if we can harness that belief or faith, then take control of our mind and body or fitness, then we can ultimately create the life that we've always dreamed about, our own superhuman life. I want to let you know how grateful and blessed I am to have you here with me today. Let's get on to today's show.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing and very exciting episode of the Superhuman Life. As always, guys, I am your host, Frank Rich, and just want to let you know how incredibly grateful and excited I am to have you here with me today, guys. What a jam-packed episode do we have lined up for you today? You'll hear through our conversation, something I've been connected with for a few years. You know, this social media space, this Facebook thing that we're all on. I know we've been on it for a really long time. It's truly remarkable. I've been connected with, I guess, for a really long time. I've been following his content, and somebody that has just having a real impact on the world, having an impact on men's lives, having an impact on women's lives, having an impact on just the children of the world as well. So I'm really excited to kind of let you guys dive in and hear, you know, what he's doing, how he's impacting and coaching men throughout the world. So I'm going to jump right in and just go ahead and do the introduction. So my guest here today is Nick Matiash. Nick is a husband, father, author, and leader of the heart-centered, purpose-driven men. He began his journey to self-improvement when he met his wife. He was just trying to become the best version of himself. And that rabbit hole that he went down when he met her has set him on this journey of self-discovery and evolution. Now, his mission today is to help men move their heads to their heart in life, love their business every day, and have an impact in building and creating and helping men evolve and grow into that best version of themselves. You know, we talk about kind of those early stages. Nick's got a unique story. He didn't experience, these rock bottom tragedy moments. He didn't reach the top of the pinnacle or the top of the mountain and realize that there's more to life. He was kind of living this kind of good, kind of mediocre, like everything is okay. But what was it that sparked his curiosity to seek more? What were his friends and family telling him? And maybe you're in a similar position there in your life as well. Maybe you're seeking more, but you're worried about what people are going to say if you're trying to improve yourself. There's a really impactful part of the conversation there as well. We talk about evolving as a man and why we need to be evolved. And then we really get into kind of our subconscious programming as well, which is something you guys know I love to vibe about. So incredible conversation, guys, jam-packed with things that you can begin implementing into your life right away. So without further ado, guys, let's get into today's conversation. Why you need to be evolving as a man with Nick Matiash. Nick, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Frank, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to see where this conversation goes. When two guys kind of get in the ring and hash out the good stuff about life, it tends to go in some pretty good ways. So I'm really excited about it, man.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really deep, meaningful conversation. And like I told you, when we were coordinating this thing, we've been connected on, this Facebook thing. It's such a unique platform because you have these connections and friendships. I can't even tell you how long we've been connected, but I've been following your work, man, and I just love your approach to coaching. I love your approach to family. I love your approach to the delivery of your content. That's what I'm really excited to kind of pull out of you here today. What we like to do is we like to, in a way, utilize storytelling through the self-development game. So I think, a great place to start with you, Nick, is we get so, in this space, you hear so many stories of these kind of rock bottom moments, like I was at this point, in my life, and like, I was in the depths, was in the darkness. And that's when kind of the aha moment arrived. So that's kind of one typical story we'll get, is that kind of breakthrough, the rock bottom story. You also get the rock top though. You get those guys that achieve every goal they set out in their life. They got the money, the job, they started the business, landed the trophy wife, the car, the material possessions, et cetera, et cetera. And they get to the pinnacle of that rock top and they realize this is it. Like, this is all that I was chasing, and there's no depth or substance to that. So those guys go through probably more of a spiritual transformation than the rock bottom people. They just really need kind of a self-evaluation, more identity work than anything. But I think with you, your story doesn't really fall into either one of those categories. You were probably where a large portion of our audience here is today. You were kind of in that kind of just middle gray area, like good life, job, nothing, really major crisis going on. So can you, maybe kind of take us back to, some area in your journey where, maybe kind of the light bulb moment kind of went off, and then we'll kind of kick that off with our conversation, and then got some things I want to, dive in that I know are really strengths of your coaching. So yeah, can you kind of take us, how did you kind of get into this, whether you want to call it personal development, self-development, whatever you want to call it, where did your kind of entry point into the world start?
Yeah, man, I appreciate that you kind of knew the background of where I started, because it's so funny that the two ends of that spectrum, the polarity of the rock bottom, rock top, or like getting to the pinnacle and realizing this is it. I thought I would be golden and I'm not. So what goes on now? Yeah, those were the stories that I was kind of looking at and put off, I guess, my journey of this process for a while, because I felt like life was pretty good. I had a job that I didn't hate. At the time, in terms of me starting the personal development phase of this, I was married to a woman that I love, and our life was pretty solid. I mean, it wasn't accelerating financially in a huge way. It wasn't going crazy off the charts in many areas. It was kind of, right in the middle. And most people would have looked at my life and said, why do you feel the urge to kind of unearth yourself and become this different version? And I mean, I straight up had conversations with friends and family members that were curious as to why I would dive into it in the way that I did. But I kind of joke that my wife is like a gateway drug for me. And the reason is when I entered into that relationship, every relationship prior to that for me was mediocre. It was just kind of, we liked each other, we enjoyed each other's company, but there was passionate moments, but it didn't have this constant like buzzing energy of I really am enjoying the space that I'm sharing with this person. It was just kind of ebb and flow. And I just assumed that was how relationships were after having 4 or 5 of those in my adult life. And then I met my wife and I was like, oh shit, like this is what it's supposed to feel like. This is what I was assuming and hoping that it would turn into. And I met my wife and it kind of went off the charts for me in terms of what it could be like. And I call her my gateway drug, because once I was in the trenches of that relationship and we got to a place we were getting married, I was like, wait, if I had assumptions about relationships and she showed me that I was wrong, I likely have assumptions about every other area of life that are also wrong that I can now explore, because I have this beautiful piece of evidence that's my wife that has shown me that what I assume to be true isn't necessarily true. So when we got married, I just kind of went down this rabbit hole with the intention of, I just want to become the best husband I can and eventually become the best father I can. That was really at the heart of it. But it was because, or at least I had this willingness to do so, because my wife kind of broke the code of what I thought was true, not necessarily being that way. So she kind of opened up my world to, and it wasn't like she was pushing me and saying, you need to go get better at other things. It was really just a switch went off in my mind that because I thought it was supposed to be a certain way and I was shown that it wasn't, there's likely a chance that other areas of life could use a similar assessment and see what I can come up with. And from there, I just kind of went down the rabbit hole of, how could I look at money differently? How could I look at my health and fitness differently? How could I do all of these things in a different way with this kind of new assumption that what I knew was bullshit, or what I thought I knew was bullshit, and allow myself to be open to what could come next. And I mean, it's really been a snowball down there, downhill from there, which is a great gift that my wife has given me. I mean, just being married to the woman is a gift in itself, but the shift in my mindset of being awakened to the idea that maybe I was wrong, kind of getting giddy about being wrong about all these other things, with the opportunity to now shift and see if I could do something different with them. It's just left me really, really curious, and a lot of great changes happened in our lives because of it. But it really started from a place of like, things are good. There's nothing wrong here. But when I got married, I really wanted to become a great husband and father. This world of personal development kind of fell to my doorstep, and mainly because I saw that I didn't know what I thought I knew. I stepped into it with a little bit more curiosity than maybe I would have prior to meeting my wife. I think I probably would have been a little more closed-minded had it been a different way.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I love the way you talk and honor your wife and all that you do, and it's definitely something I'm gonna get to later here, is because you coach a lot of husbands and whatnot. So I know you said she wasn't like forcing this growth, personal development kind of down your throat. Were there signs that you saw within her? Like was she into self-development, self-growth, and like you kind of saw it through her, or what do you think it was about the connection between the two of you, her presence, just the way that she, moved and kind of navigated through the world? Like, could you pin it to anything specific within her, or was it just kind of like just all encompassing?
She was definitely not into self-development to the point that when I kind of got into the rabbit hole a certain amount, she was like, what the hell's going on? Who are you? What are you talking about? What are all these books when you're meditating now? What is this? So she definitely wasn't on that path on her own. What I really mean in terms of her showing me this deep contrast between what I thought was true and what actually could be true was, I think I was always a pretty good guy in terms of, at least I wanted to be. I grew up with a great dad who showed me what it was supposed to be like to be a husband and father who was present, who was caring, who took care of his family. So I kind of had a good model in terms of how I dated other people. I was not perfect by any means, but I was always a pretty decent and at least attempted to be a good boyfriend and partner to anybody I was with. But I never really got a deep appreciation in return. Not to say that I had to be validated in a way, but it was never honored and acknowledged in the way that I have now come to understand as I coach, and also for myself. Like, I think men really, really not need, but deeply respect a woman who's like, I really love the way that you're showing up for me and showing up for our family. When they're acknowledged in a real and authentic way, it just creates this deep cycle of, oh my God, she's seeing what I'm doing. I want to do more of it. And everybody wins when that happens. And I never really got that from other women. It was like almost kind of swept under the rug, and it wasn't acknowledged in a full and honest way. At least I didn't perceive it that way in those old relationships. But very early on in our relationship, my wife was very open, honest, and shared deeply, like, that was really nice what you did there. That was really kind. That was thoughtful what you did there. Like little things like me bringing Oreos to her apartment because we were going to have a movie night. And like I said, like just really small things she would always acknowledge and notice. And it over time kind of started to click with me. Like, she's noticing how I'm showing up. She's honoring and appreciating how I'm showing up. And like I said, it creates this cycle of, I want to do more for her because she's showing me how much it means to her. And it's a win for her because she's getting it in return, but it's a win for me because I'm also kind of seeing how valuable I am to this woman. And I never really had that before. So to kind of be in a relationship where I was being deeply acknowledged, and not so much just for random stuff, but for me just kind of being myself and trying to be as thoughtful as I could be, it just kind of created this loop within our relationship where she was like, thank you, showing gratitude. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to keep giving more of this to you. And like, even before I came down here tonight, I was about to take our dog out for a walk. And she said something along the lines of like, how did you become such a cute man? Or something like little offhand comments that she probably thinks are just her being silly or whatever. I'm like, she notices me. She's acknowledging me. This is 8 years after today is 8 years, 8 years since we became exclusive. And it's also my son just turned 6 months today. So it's it's funny when I look back at how simple it was in terms of what she was showing me versus other women. It meant a lot to me, and it just made me show up in a deeper way. And I just wanted to keep that ball rolling after we got married. I really think that being a husband, it felt significant, and I didn't want to cheapen that title. I wanted to make sure that I was being the husband that I was supposed to be, that I wanted to be. Boyfriend was cool, fiance was fine, but like when I became a husband, it was just like something is important here, and it just made me more and more intentional in that path of getting better. But it was really never about her wanting or needing me to do more. I don't think she would ever say that out loud. She was like, I never asked for this, like at all. It was just me personally wanting to make sure that she always knew she made the right choice. And, the rest is history, because I don't think she'll ever renege on that choice after all the work I've done.
That's amazing. Here we are. We're 88 episodes. Kind of into the show. Just over 2 years, and every episode you kind of you had these handful of kind of like aha moments. And I as you were sharing that, like my it just like the trigger just went off. Like I hope all the husbands and engaged men and those that aspire to be husbands in their life were paying attention to what you just said there when you were discussing the importance or how serious, being a husband would. Like, yeah, the boyfriend, part was fun. That was cool. The fiance, yeah, that's kind of next level. Things get a little more serious. But the way in which you really took responsibility for being not just a husband, not even a good husband, but a great husband. How different would the world be if every single man approached his marriage through that perspective? Brother, that was incredible. Are you a 5 love languages guy? Like, I'm sure you've read the book.
Oh yeah. My wife and I. Well, I'll be honest. I haven't read the book all the way through. My wife and I kind of dabbled with it just out of curiosity, but we've taken the little quiz that it offers online a couple times. So we're both aware of what our love languages are. It's
words
funny,
of affirmation, right?
Right. So in the beginning, we were both very high on words of affirmation. I think acts of service was number 2 for me, but we both reassessed and took it a couple of years ago. I can't remember when, but my wife's kind of flipped, and her number 1 thing is gifts now. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. And she's like, it's not because I need you to buy me a bunch of stuff, but kind of speaking to what I was sharing about, like her just really appreciating thoughtful gestures, that has come to the forefront as like the thing that she values the most. Words of affirmation are still pretty high for her, but gifts has kind of emerged. And I thought that was really interesting, and something that I've also spoken to my clients about, because, you bring up 5 love languages, especially in conversations with other men who are at least interested in becoming a good quality partner. They've probably heard of it, right? But I would never have guessed that those things are going to shift in a significant way. They'll probably be in the same ballpark. But when it went from words of affirmation from my wife as something that she valued to gifts, it almost took me by surprise, and I had to rewire not how I showed up, but at least kind of redirect my energy from, okay, are you going to overwhelm her with compliments and saying nice things, or are you going to use that energy towards what can you grab at the grocery store that she knows that she would appreciate? Like little things like that, just being cognizant of it. That's what the only thing I really hammer home about the love language stuff is. It just having the awareness is huge, because you could be a very intentional husband, an intentional person that wants to give all this love to your partner. But if you're mowing the lawn and fixing the roof and doing all this stuff around the house, acts of service, because you think that that's how it's supposed to be done, it could feel very loving coming from you. But if she doesn't care about acts of service, you're literally wasting your energy. So having the awareness of where she is looking to receive that love from, it's huge if a guy is open to actually kind of exploring that and using it. I think a lot of guys just kind of default to whatever feels right to them.
Well, it's typically like, yeah, you're familiar with yours, and that's kind of your default. Like you want to love other people the same way that you're loved, and that's that's not always going to be the case. Like perfect example here, in the relationship with you and your wife. Like if you were just words of affirmation. I wonder how much of her becoming a mother played a role in maybe some of that differences, because you said you recently redid it. And I don't know why a mother would transition from words of affirmation to gifts, maybe because she's now delivered her, her greatest gift to the world. So now it's like, hey, I deserve gifts. I don't know.
You
if there's
owe me.
something to that.
You owe me. Right. For sure. Could be.
We get into this, we get into space, we kind of, we had this kind of, light bulb moment kind of, it clicks, once we're in the marriage. You were teaching at the time, correct? That was your career. So what was, you said you kind of had some people, I don't know if it was family or friends, like, you got a life, you got the American dream, wife, house, family, like, kind of like you checked all those boxes. But then you saw these people like, why are you seeking growth? Why are you seeking change? So what were some of the first steps that you took for you?
Yeah, I started with, and I think this is kind of an innate guy thing, but when we got married, the first thought in my mind was I need to get our financial house in order. So like everybody says like, what was your big book? What was the one that changed your life or got you into the game? My first book was a Dave Ramsey book, The Total Money Makeover. And I don't even necessarily agree with everything that Dave Ramsey talks about these days, but just like what happened with that book was I read it cover to cover. First book I'd read cover to cover since high school, maybe. And it had a couple things that you could start implementing. And I was like, all right, you know what? If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I read the book, took the things or exercises they asked you to do, put it into play, and we ended up paying off both of our cars in, I don't know, like a year. So what happened was it wasn't Dave Ramsey's content that blew my mind. It was, here's an action you can take. Here's a result that you can get. And seeing that it actually worked and helped us like financially, I was like, you know what? I'm sure there's other things I could be doing or trying that's going to better our lives in some way. So that kind of then spiraled into the books and the podcasts and all of that stuff. And then eventually I think I kind of hit that point. And I think a lot of people do, especially if you get deep into the game of personal development. You're like, I'm reading a lot of stuff, but I mean, I feel like I'm hitting a ceiling of sorts of implementation, or at least having someone that can at least speak more intentionally into my life specifically. So I started hiring coaches and getting into masterminds just so I could just be in an active conversation about it rather than a passive one where I was just listening to someone or reading a book. So that kind of just over time, just consuming a lot of content, listening to mentors, getting engaged with those types of conversations. And the whole teaching thing, I think, does play a part in why I then became a coach myself and why I've turned around now and created this coaching business. I'm actually still teaching, by the way. I'm doing both, but slowly transitioning out into the coaching world, I would say in the next couple of years. But anyway, so I teach math. And math is basically like teaching a foreign language, especially to middle school and high school students. You're trying to communicate to them a difficult language that most of them don't care to know and don't understand very well. So what happened with the whole personal development thing for me was I was taking all this information in and I was using my skill set as a teacher to then take this difficult information and try to break it down into something that's really easy to understand. So I would take it and I started a blog for myself called Moving Past Mediocre because I just had this teacher in me that wanted to now share all the things I was learning. And what I found was I was decent. I was pretty good at taking these difficult concepts that Tony Robbins and the Coveys of the world and, who else is on my bookshelf, Dale Carnegie's of the world. So you take all these difficult concepts that some people don't take the time to try to understand because it's too overwhelming. And by distilling it down into something that's a little bit more manageable and accessible, I found that I was doing that pretty well. People were, engaging with what I was saying, not because I was, saying anything specific, but I was taking these complex things, distilling them down, making them simple. And it's really because, I'd spent a decade in teaching doing the same thing with math. If I just talked about the quadratic formula to death, it wouldn't be useful to a kid. But if I break it down into the pieces that then make sense to them, they can use it. So I was taking that skill set and applying it to the personal development stuff, started sharing it on social media, started sharing it on this blog. And slowly but surely, it started to trickle out into, what the hell are you doing over there? Tell me a little bit about your morning routine. And eventually I kind of got brave enough to say like, okay, if you want to really get into the conversation, it's going to be this amount for this amount of time. So very slow beginnings. If I look back at how much I was charging for coaching when I first started, it's like okay, that's not a lot of money at all, but it was something, right? And it slowly started to snowball into what it is today. The evolved man, as we're working with guys and in their relationships and the way that they're working on themselves for those relationships. But that was kind of the beginning. And like you kind of reflected back to me, there was a lot of, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? You're in a good relationship. You're in a good spot. What is this all about? And it was just really for me to take this interest of being who I could be, flipping it into something that could be accessible because I just enjoyed the art of teaching it. And now it's kind of steamrolled into what we have in front of us now.
I want to zoom in right there on those conversations with, your friends, your family, the ones that are maybe questioning and doubting you, because I know there's going to be a lot of men that that are in that same exact place. They're like, they have this goal or they have this dream or this vision, like this aspiration of improvement, but there's a doubt inside of them, or maybe it's already happened once in their life, like they've been questioned. Maybe it's even been their spouse or their wife or their mom or so and so. So did you have a formula of the conversation? Did you have something you kind of pulled on? Did you say it's none of your business? Like, how were you, kind of process? I know from what I know about you, it's none of your business wasn't the response. But yeah, like what was, how were you able to manage that in the time? Because I think that this can be really helpful to men that are maybe, like I said, in that exact same place where you were.
Yeah. I think in the beginning, I think it's probably pretty natural to have a sense of defensiveness. And I certainly had that. I remember, I went golfing with some buddies and my brother-in-law, and we're just having a couple beers after the round. And my brother-in-law was the one that asked the question. And then my buddies kind of spun on that too. And we're like, yeah, what the hell are you, like, you've never really had hard times in your life. There's no rock bottom for you here. Like, what's the deal? Because they saw, like I saw, that usually people that go on this path have a pretty distinct reason why they need to rise up from something or what have you. And they were just kind of blatantly saying, that hasn't happened to you. What are you doing? So there's a level of defensiveness because it felt important to me. But at the same time, I didn't think at that time I had anything to verbalize the importance of it. Aside from at that, back then, I couldn't see what I now see. I couldn't see the wife, the kids, the house, the trajectory. It was just, I just want to be better. And that's really all I had. And it felt like it wasn't a good enough response to their question that was kind of saying, like, your life's not hard. What are you doing? So in the beginning, there was certainly some defensiveness. I think in time, the thing that I have leaned on the most, and I've also said this to a couple of my clients who have similar situations, is people fall in love with a certain construct of who you are over time. My family certainly had resistance to this. My wife even had resistance to this. My friends certainly had resistance to this because they got to know a certain version of me. They loved that version of me. And when you love that specific version, when that version of that person says, this isn't good enough, I'd like to change this version, it feels like an attack on the person that they fell in love with. It feels like they're trying to change up the thing that I really care about. So the kind of playful way of speaking on this to my clients is like, what's your favorite movie? So Frank, I'll just straight up ask you, if you had a favorite movie, if something comes to mind, what's your favorite movie? Gladiator. Okay. So let's just say we took Gladiator and we recasted Gladiator and we changed up some of the plot, but we still called it Gladiator and told you that it was the same movie. How would you feel?
I probably wouldn't watch it.
Right. It would be weird. It would be frustrating. It's like, why are you changing Gladiator? It's a great flick. That's how people feel about us when we choose to change who we are, because we are, to them, Gladiator. My favorite movie is Anchorman. So I always say, like, if someone went to Anchorman and said, we're going to actually swap out Will Ferrell with Kevin Hart and we're going to do some other stuff over here and we're going to change up I would be pissed. Even though it's probably still going to be a decent flick, I would still be pissed because it's the thing that I love is the construction of Anchorman as it is. And that's, when we are who we've been and our parents see that person and our wives see that person, our friends see that person. And then you're like, actually, I know you guys love me and that's great, but I'm going to switch some stuff up and I'm still me. I'm still going to have the same title and everything. Like, I'm still Nick, but I'm going to be pretty different in time. And I hope you guys can still appreciate that. It takes them some time to realize that you are still the same person, but it's a process of change and transformation that's for me. And it's not an attack on anybody else. It's not to say that who you used to love is not good enough. It's just that I'm looking to work on myself for my own good. And eventually people come around. Like my family, they understand I have a business now. This is something that I really love and enjoy. And they ask about it now. In the beginning, it was like, yeah, whatever. With my wife in the beginning, there was a lot of resistance, thinking that I was trying to outgrow her, thinking I was trying to move past our relationship because I didn't like my life as it was. And now I had to do something different. So there was a lot of deep conversation. There was a lot of understanding that needed to be had. But everybody comes around in time. It's just a matter in the beginning. Well, I wouldn't say everybody. The people that come around are the people that are supposed to come around. The people that are supposed to be in your circle and stay in your circle. The people that see it as an affront to your relationship, they can go. And that might happen. I didn't have a ton of that, but there's still some people that are kind of on the fringes now that used to be really close. But in time, they kind of see that, oh, the heart is still there. The person is still there. It's just that the pieces and the things that they think about and talk about might be different, but the person that I cared about is still around. It's just that maybe they have different elements that before they didn't have. So that's kind of what I would say to any guy that's listening, or that's what I say to my clients is the whole movie concept for me was one that kind of cemented it and made sense, because everybody has a favorite movie. Everybody has a movie they love. And if someone told you that they're going to switch up that movie and change it, but they're going to try to convince you it's still the same movie, they'd be pretty pissed. So it's kind of what your family and friends are going to experience is that same vibe, but you just got to wait it out, because in time, the people that are supposed to be there will still be there.
No, the movie analogy is amazing. And, as you kind of were getting deeper into, that analogy, like I'm literally like, I think there's a large portion of men in kind of my generation. I'll be 38 later this month. I'm sure we're probably somewhat near the same age, but, I grew up in the Jordan era, Chicago Bulls, number 23, Space Jam, Looney Tunes. And then now they have this, this newer version out with LeBron or whatever. I've seen the ads and whatnot. I have no desire, because the first one was perfect. It was exactly what the movie needed to be. And, it's funny because Space Jam, I'm thinking now, like, I was a Jordan collector. Like I had at one point, I don't know, 150, 200 pairs of Jordans. It was probably another form of addiction that I had in my 20s. I've gotten rid of a vast majority of the shoes. One of the pairs that I kept is the actual Space Jams, the shoes that are in that movie. It's got nothing to do with this conversation, but I loved the analogy, and I love what you said too about there's going to be people that don't stick around, and that's going to be okay. It's okay to outgrow people. It's okay to like I'm looking over the left shoulder here. It's okay to evolve as a man, and what you'll find out is that newer version, that improved version, because it's not a changed, different version of you. It's just an improved, better version. That new, improved, better version is going to be able to attract better friends, better network. Like that's a process. So that's really powerful. Speaking about this evolve, your entire business is centered around, or it's called the Evolved Man. So why do men need to be evolving?
Yeah, I mean, we live in a world that's always evolving. I think we've certainly experienced that in the last couple of years here, pandemic life, and life is going to throw you some curveballs. And if you think that you get to be the same guy and walk through this thing unscathed, it just doesn't work like that. You always have to continue to improve who you are, improve your skill sets, improve just how you relate to the world. I think most of life is just kind of shedding the perception of who you are or who you used to be and allowing more and more in. Because if we tried to remain as the same person, it's not going to work out very well. And I speak to guys a lot about their relationships. And one big thing that I kind of situation that kind of highlights this is, when you propose to your wife, some guys see that as the finish line. I got her, snagged her. She's mine for life. And that stagnancy, that mindset, that idea that like, cool, we're good here, is unfortunate, because it's those guys that in 20 years and 15 years, their wives are miserable because the guy that they married when they were 24 or 25 or whatever is still 24 or 25, and she's moved on, she's evolving, she's becoming a mother and trying to manage what life is like. And he's still kind of thinking that he was as he was supposed to be. And this is the thing too. I think I posted about this yesterday on Facebook. Like, you are always innately good enough as a human being, but how you're showing up might need an upgrade. And that's okay. Like, you are worthy and deserving and all of that in terms of your enoughness, but your skill set and how you operate and show up in relationships, business, and everything else, you got to stay on your toes. You have to become better and continue that process. And there's no finish line. I think this is kind of true to my story and how I've shared it. Like, the I do was the starting line for me. Like, when I became a husband, that was not game over. Like, game has just begun. We're literally committing to a lifetime, and she's going to get more of my time than any other human has in all of my life. At the time that we got married, a very large part of my life still was my nuclear family, the family I grew up with, and I still love and care about them. They're coming up tomorrow, and spending some time here at our house. But like, in time, the one human that's going to spend the most time with me for always is going to be my wife. And if I think that I get to still show up as, how old was I when we got married? 27. If I get to be 27-year-old Nick for the rest of my life, that's a disservice to my wife. It's a disservice to my kids. Like, my kids deserve an evolutionary version of me throughout their lives. Like, if they're going to get me now, when they need a different version of me when they're older, when they're becoming, husbands and wives and mothers and fathers, like, they're going to need me to continue to build out a skill set and a knowledge base that can continue to pour into them. Because if I only stuck with what I knew when I was 27, or what I knew when I'm 33 or whatever, like, that's not good enough. So it's the nature of us growing and changing and living in a world that's not going to stop. Like, we could choose to, I think this is more poignant too. Like, we could choose to stay the same. It's an option, but eventually the world is going to demand that you change. Something's going to happen. Like, you're going to have a breakdown. You're going to get kicked in the nuts. Your parents are going to pass. Your grandparents are going to pass. You're going to lose your job. You're going to go through a miscarriage, whatever. There's going to be something that brings you to your knees. And I am so, so grateful that in those moments where we've had some rough times, grandparents passing away, we went through a miscarriage, things like that, I was doing the work before it happened. And it wasn't to say that I was perfect in those moments, but I was prepared. And that was a result of me staying on the ball of my evolution. Whereas I know there's a lot of guys that take those moments and it brings them to their knees, and then they want to have a conversation with me after the fact. Evolution and continual the idea of staying on the ball of your own evolution is to stay prepared, because life is always going to throw you stuff. And if you're always in it, it's not going to knock you off course. It might take you down for a day or two or a week or a month, because grieving and going through it is important, but it's not going to take you away from where you're moving to. You know what I mean?
No, yeah. If you wait till the moment of despair, to formalize your game plan or for a reaction, then you're way too late. Like, you need to be doing the front end work. You need to kind of have a game plan. And if you live long enough and you take enough risk, like, you're going to be brought to your knees, not just once, multiple times. I mean, like I told you, I'm only going to be 38 this month. And there's been a handful of times, like, life has just said, we're knocking you down because we know you're big, you're big enough and strong enough to build back. And for you, I think at 27, if you would have just stayed there, you would have been ahead of a lot of the men out there. Because I think most men are kind of stuck in that 22 to 24. It's like the video games, the 8 hours of college football on Saturday, the porn, the strip clubs, all the kind of things that I deal with in the world. That's definitely not that's not what a wife deserves.
It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
What does being a husband mean to you?
Man, it means everything to me. That was the gateway for me. That was where this all began. And to me, it just really means being home and being the place of safety for my wife. I think my sister-in-law couple months ago, asked my wife, like, if you could think of one word to represent Nick to you, what would it be? And my wife's like, spitballing ideas, like, it could be this word, could be this word. And I just said home. And she's like, that's the word. That's the one. And I was like, I just kind of just sprung it out of my chest. It didn't take a lot of thought, but that's what I want to be for her. I want to make sure that she feels like she is safe, that she is home, that she is exactly where she needs to be. She's got her own business as well. There's trying times in all things that come with entrepreneurship and being a mom of now 2 kids, and we just have gone through so much life change together. And being that person that she knows that no matter what, she's got somebody in her corner that's not going to let her slip and fall and go off to sea, that she's good is everything to me. I wrote a post maybe a month ago and was talking about that nature of being home to someone and being that person that can hold them down. And I was like, the masculine is that person, like the masculine versus the feminine. You want to be the strength and the sturdiness and the person that can hold them down. And as one line in there or something that caught her eye was, the feminine, your wife, sometimes she's going to have emotional moments. So she's going to feel like she's buzzing around the room, flying around the room. Your job is to just be the thing that's tethering her to the ground so she can still fly, but she's not going to fly away. Like, she's going to have the space to feel how she needs to feel and be who she needs to be, but she's not going to be at risk or be unsafe in doing so. So that's everything to me, is making sure that my wife knows that when she puts her head on her pillow and when she wakes up, like, we're good. There's going to be things that happen, but she doesn't worry about this. She might worry about her business. She might worry about our kids, but I don't think there's a moment that goes by during the day that she worries if I'm going to take care of her or not, because that's just standard. So that's kind of what husband is for me, is knowing that she feels that way on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. And I'm sure if you surveyed every woman, safety or, kind of security, kind of, some of the things that I was taking away from what you were saying there would rank very high at the top of their list of, life priorities for women. So, yeah. Where did I don't want to say the ability to write, because everybody can write, but you got into blogging early on, and then I know you wrote a book, and one of the things that I really love about your content is the captions, like videos and pictures and all that stuff. Like, when you read the depth and your ability to, I don't know if you've been trained in copywriting or what. So yeah, what's your background? I know you're a teacher, but you said you were teaching math. So where did the writing come from?
The writing for me, I realized pretty quickly that it was a result of things that I cared about deeply. And the reason I say that is the first opportunity I had to write anything of length was the year that I got married. My buddy and I, my best friend, we both got married the same year. I was his best man. So both for his wedding and for my wedding, we wrote our own vows. I got the chance to sit down and plot out what I wanted to say about 2 people I cared deeply about. So to have that opportunity to do that for them, but also to share that with an audience, was my first experience of kind of witnessing that if I cared about something, whether it be someone in those cases or some topic, deeply enough, I could really make it pretty engaging. The people at these 2 weddings I'm sure at my wedding they knew who I was, but maybe at my buddy's wedding, they didn't know who I was, but they could listen to the stories that I was saying and understand some of the language and jokes that I was using. So piecing together things that I care about and putting that into a communicative format of some kind of writing became something I really, really enjoyed. And I think it was because of those 2 experiences that opened me up to starting a blog and starting to share more openly about the process of what I was learning as a husband, and trying to kind of piece together what has now become, pretty consistent content sharing and my work as a coach and all of that stuff. But it really kind of began accidentally. I was asked to be somebody's best man. My wife and I exchanged our own vows, and for me, it felt good, but I also got feedback from other people, like kind of coming out like, yo, that speech was like, that was crazy. After we exchanged vows, like people that were my wife's friends that didn't really know me that well, like just coming up, shaking my hand, like, that was beautiful. And it wasn't I'm sure it helped my ego. Of course it did. But to have the recognition and understand that, oh, wow, like me communicating things that were from the heart seemed to resonate with people. As long as it was something that I then cared about moving forward, it kind of became a starting place for a reason to share, I guess you could say. Because there's plenty of stuff that I do talk about, whether it be about my coaching stuff or anything else. But if it's something I'm like, nah, doesn't really fit my shtick, it doesn't really, rev me up in any kind of way, I just kind of put it to the side and let other people talk about it, because I know it's not going to come through as impactful as it would if it was something about, things that I tend to bang out on. So
yeah, and it's your real authentic, voice. If you were dabbling in other areas, like it wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be genuine. I think the ability to, influence, persuade, impact, storytell through the written word is really one of the most powerful skills that anybody can learn. So I want to get into your book a little bit, because I think a lot of the things you talk about in your book with this kind of subconscious and conscious, mind of ours, rings very true, and it's very similar to the work that I do. So in the addiction space, I mean, I believe life is just a game of neurochemistry. When you understand that, and you understand the tools, to really put the neuroplasticity in your favor, like it's kind of fun. Like life becomes enjoyable when you know how to pull certain levers. So you can't, talk about your book a little bit and kind of talk about, kind of your teaching and understanding of the unconscious and conscious brain, if you can.
Yeah. So the book it's kind of broken down into 3 parts. It's got basically, what is your subconscious mind? What is it doing for you? What is it doing against you? What's the pros, the cons? An understanding in a way that is real and authentic and isn't all like science information in your face. That's really, the books that I really love and like have read a couple times are the ones that weren't really deep in the science and the technological explanation of things, but giving you a concept, giving you a rough explanation of it, but then kind of giving you some examples or some context that makes it understandable. That's kind of what the beginning of my book is all about, helping you understand the subconscious mind in a way that feels real to you and it feels tangible. And then the second part is, all right, so cool. Subconscious mind is this big beast that's basically running your life. How do I get in there and shift some stuff around? So the second part of the book is, what are some things you can do to get in there? So, meditation, having a coach, getting your habits and your reps up on the things that you don't do well now so they can become habitual in time. That's what the second book is, or the second phase of the book is. And then the third part of the book is, now that you've kind of understood that your subconscious mind is running your life, here's how you get in. Third part is, all right, the gates are open. The path is clear. How can you live a little bit more consciously in the here and now, so that the subconscious mind that you have been carrying forward for your entire life starts to really get downloaded in a way that serves you? Because over time, if you think something consciously enough, it will eventually start to get into that space that is all powerful as your subconscious mind. It's just that most of our experiences have been not super conscious. We just think thoughts on repeat, and they eventually kind of download and become this big block of information inside your mind and your brain that just runs without you ever thinking about it. The one story or chapter that I wrote about in the first part was, I come from Niagara Falls, New York, and so we're really close to Buffalo. And for the longest time in my life, aside from these last couple of years, the Buffalo Bills were awful, just really, really bad football. And everyone that I knew was a Buffalo Bills fan, and I'm like, I don't understand. And I will declare I'm a Bills fan, but I'm not a diehard. So I kind of had this distance from #Bills Mafia. And as I got to think about, why is that? Because we've, my generation, I'm actually 33 at the end of this month. My generation never watched good football until the last couple of years when Josh Allen came through. So why do we like the Bills? We should all boycott and not like the Bills at that point, right? But our parents' generation saw Jim Kelly, saw 4 straight Super Bowls, saw in their heyday when they were in their 30s and 40s, they saw this excellent, amazing football, exciting football. And then they told us about it. And we love and trust our parents so much with their stories and their life experience that all of a sudden we just take it in. We're like, oh, okay, the Buffalo Bills must be good. even though our conscious mind is watching the screen and saying like, really? But we just keep trusting in those old stories, the old patterns that were kind of just hand-me-downs from our parents. And I use that example to help people understand, like Buffalo Bills, that's like a cheeky example, but your parents are giving you so much information out of a good place from the goodness of their heart. They think it's the right thing to do. And I'm doing the same thing with my kids. There's going to be things that fall through the cracks, right? But the point is, there's so much stuff that we just don't ever know has come into our life, into our brain, that's running the show in the background. And once we get some awareness to it, we can start to untie some of those knots and really start to put down some of the stories that don't serve us anymore. One of my buddies, Julian Rosen, something he says is like, from 0 to 10, your brain doesn't have a bouncer. It doesn't have anybody at the door checking IDs and making sure that that's factual, that's not factual, that's true, that's not true. There's no, filtering system of truth versus false. And that can be really bad if you live in a home or in an environment or around people that are just kind of spewing random stuff that isn't really powerful for you. So really understanding that your subconscious mind is the collection of all of those things you learned as a kid and also in adulthood repeatedly helps you say like, oh, okay, so maybe that's why I think that love is a sham. And maybe that's why I think that it's really, really hard to make money. That was one of the things that I had to untie for myself was rich people are evil and making money is really, really difficult. And having a business is not fun or like all of the money stories from my childhood were money's hard, money's challenging. We don't talk about money because money is this big demon. And if I kept thinking those things while trying to build a business, I got no shot. So, while sitting with one of my coaches that shed some light on this for me, and this is, part 2 of the book, how can you move through this stuff? Get somebody to reflect back to you what your stories are so you can start to move through them. Being able to see that, oh, wow, it's going to be really hard to build a business while also being anchored down by my subconscious mind saying, money is really bad for you, though. Like it's an internal conflict that needs to be sorted out. Because it doesn't matter how hard you work, it doesn't matter how many hours you put in, if you have these subconscious things that are steering you back towards your mediocrity or your low point, it's going to be your default mechanism that brings you back to whatever has been, quote unquote, normal for you. So it's really, really, really important to understand what that looks like for you, and then kind of steps to work through it and get to the other side so you can start to infiltrate with good stuff rather than staying on whatever that default mode has been for you.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I'm really like to say, I almost said one of the things I've become famous for. I'm definitely not famous for anything. Is I do this in my coaching. Is to take some time every day thinking about what you're thinking about. Like you said, we had these thoughts just kind of blazing through, boom, just firing from all different directions. Thought this, da da da. Take some time, slow down, like stop consuming, put the phone down, turn off YouTube, shut off the podcast. Like we're in this over consuming mode. Take some time, be still and silent. Just think like, where are these thoughts coming from? Are they my thoughts? Are they thoughts that got passed down to me? Are they thoughts that somebody has projected upon me? Are they thoughts that I, maybe saw in somebody else and, I'm trying to, make them become me? But yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, I could go all night with you on the brain. That's my jam, man. But out of respect for you, your time, and obviously listeners, I want to bring this home here. So you talked a lot about mentors. Who have been kind of some of the the fundamental key figures in your growth, mentorship wise?
Yeah, so I have had a few significant ones. The first one that kind of was my introduction to investing in any kind of coaching or mastermind was a guy named Tommy Baker. So he's written a couple books, but he has a podcast called the Resist Average podcast and Resist Average Academy, I think it's called. And I had listened to that pretty frequently, and he offered this mastermind. I was like, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. And I sheepishly went to my wife and was like, hey, it's X amount of dollars. Can I do it? And she, was very resistant, but eventually that kind of got the ball rolling. And then it kind of evolved from there. And Tommy and I parted ways amicably. And I actually met someone else within one of his programs named Preston Pugmire, who I eventually worked with a little bit after that. And Preston and I, then, basically what happened was I got to a place with each coach that I'd kind of learned what I'd learned, really gotten a lot of value from them, but my life was continuing to change and I needed a different person in front of me to speak some new truths into my life. And I realized this with Tommy, and basically I've reflected on this and understood this. With Tommy, he taught me a lot about habits, getting up and taking care of business. What's your morning routine look like? What's meditation? What's all this stuff that I was just really unfamiliar with? And it's really great to have this access to someone who's kind of an expert at that and can hammer that home and tell you about the value of it. But once I got some of those things down, Tommy at the time was, I don't know if he was single or if he was engaged at the time, but he wasn't on the same track of life as I was. Like, he had more spare time than I did. I had a kid on the way. I had things moving in my life that was starting to squeeze some of the time that maybe he had more wide open and available. And it wasn't that I couldn't do what he was doing, but I needed someone else to show me an example of what life could be like as a dad, as a husband, and still make this whole entrepreneurship thing work. So when I started working with Preston, he is married, he has 2 kids. I'm like, okay, so he's got more of what my life is projected to be like, and to learn from him would be great. So I hung out with him, and he was my mentor for a while. And then after that, I started working with this guy named Nick Tilia. I've been working with Nick off and on for, I would say, 3-4 years. I love Nick. He's great. But what was different about Nick was he actually comes from the world of education as well. So, every coach that I have kind of leveled up into has been more of a reflection of my life and what is possible. So that was really the big 3 for me have been them. I've had other business coaches and things along the way, but the big ones who've been a mainstay for, years at a time were those 3 guys. And, I learned a lot from Tommy about just execution and what you can do every day to move your life forward. Preston, I learned about just kind of the inner workings of your mind and how that plays into the execution. And then with Nick, I learned a lot about, what does it look like to be a husband, father. He's got 4 kids. He's living, the life that he wants to. He's left education, all that stuff. That's been a great example. But his work has also really gotten me into the spiritual side of things. So pairing some of that science and mindset stuff with the spiritual side of what this life is all about has been really valuable to me as well. So those are the big 3 for me. And I'm sure in time there's going to be others, but that's kind of where we're at for now.
Yeah, that's great. And it kind of brings us back to, the beginning of the conversation. We were talking about, kind of outgrowing, some of your friends and relationships. And the same can happen with coaches and mentors. It's not always a bad thing to kind of be ready to level up and get to that next level. So, if you guys are out there, seeking mentorship, like we hammer this home every single episode, like no matter what you're trying to get to, it's like, what was the analogy I heard? Like getting a coaching is like getting the airplane ticket. Like I could walk from Florida up to Buffalo, New York. Take me a really, really long time. To buy an airplane ticket, I'm going to get there, in 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Like coaching is the same thing. Like you can get to the next phase of your life, maybe on your own. It's going to take you a long time. There's going to be a lot of hardships. There's going to be, you try to walk to Buffalo. That's a difficult trip on foot. And the same is going to be for your life. You try to go about this life all alone, it's going to be difficult. Yeah, you may reach your destination, but getting a coach, getting a mentor, getting something that kind of accelerate, buying time, buying implementation. That's what coaching is all about. So, great place to kind of bring it home here. So, well, we have one last question I want to end with. We end every episode with, but before we do that, Nick, if people want to connect with you online, if they want to check out the book, if they're interested in coaching, et cetera, where are you hanging out these days socially, and where can people, find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, I mean, on Facebook, I am just my name, obviously, Nick Matiash. It's Matiash for those listening with audio because it does not sound like it spells. So if you just look me up on Facebook, that's an easy place to find me. I do have a free Facebook group on Facebook called the Evolve Man Cave. And every week I go live in there and do some form of training for like 10 to 15 minutes based on the feedback from the group and just kind of seeing where they're at, what do they need. So every single week we're doing something valuable in there. So I highly recommend diving into that. And then on Instagram, it's the same thing, just my name, Nick Matiash. And, pretty consistent on both of them. In terms of coaching, if that's something that you're interested in, just find me on one of those socials and just shoot me a message and be straightforward. I always kind of say to guys, like, that first step, that courageous, like, hey, can we have a conversation? That's going to probably be the most awkward thing you do, but it could be the most powerful thing you do. I think there's a lot of talk in the space of men's coaching and men's work that is all about having power and courage and all of this stuff. Like, I think one of the most courageous and powerful things you can do for yourself is being vulnerable enough to say, yo, I need help with this. What can you do to help me? And just opening up that conversation rather than waiting 3 months, 6 months, a year of watching my content and saying that resonated, that. Like, there's guys that I know who have been friends with me on Facebook that like every single post, that comment on every other one, that say, oh my God, this is hitting home today. Or, oh my God, are you watching me? Like, the fact that at some point they're going to get to a place like, all right, I guess I have to work with Nick because it seems like he knows exactly what I need. You could do that and save yourself the time, like you were saying before. Like, you buy the plane ticket, you're going to get there faster. Is there a price tag with the plane ticket? Yes. But you could keep walking and spend months on the road trying to do that. Like,
yeah, and walking to Buffalo is probably going to end up being more expensive than buying a plane ticket if you really, thought about it. Like, you're not going to walk there for free. You're going to have to stop by food, places to sleep, stay, etc. You're probably going to end up in a hospital somewhere as well. That's going to hit you with a huge bill. So it's going to end up costing you. Yeah, it's going to end up costing you, a lot more. But that first call, man, that is so true. I was telling you the work that we do here before we hit record tonight. Helping men with what many times is something that they don't really want to admit. It's something they probably haven't talked about a lot. And we offer free consults if people are just looking for a place to have a safe conversation. And yeah, there's coaching and there's programs and whatnot, and we're running a business. Obviously, there's revenue goals and targets, but the work is for impact. The work is mission driven, and I tell every single one of them, what comes out of this call, whether we move forward with coaching, because it's an application as well. Like, I'm not going to take a person on unless I truly, believe that they're committed to the process. But I tell every single one of them, my life changed on February 14th, 2019, when I found the courage to get vulnerable and have a conversation with somebody. And I try to provide that place for men as well. And it sounds like you're doing a very, very similar thing. So we want to continue to support the work. So we'll get all that information plugged down there. We appreciate, what you're doing in the world for men. It's much needed. So we're so grateful for all of that. So as we bring it home here, Nick, we have a final question we ask every single guest. So obviously the show is called The Superhuman Life. I told you a little bit about kind of the genesis of it being kind of my own transformation. There was a spiritual transformation that I went through as well. So I'm glad you kind of added that piece in there as well. But when I talk about living a superhuman life, for me, it's more of a belief. It's a way that I go about setting up my life and the intention at which I take every day on. And what it means to me is that we there's a purpose to our life. We were placed here. We were created with a divine calling or purpose on our life. And then it's our job or our responsibility to utilize these gifts, whether they're the physical gifts, whether they're, the mental gifts, whether they're just the skills and talents that we've been gifted. It's our job to fully maximize those. And when you understand the purpose and you're in line and walking in that purpose and fully maximizing everything here that you've been given, in my eyes, that's what I define as living a superhuman life. So I like to get the guest take on it. So Nick, Matiash, as we bring it home here tonight, how would you define living a superhuman life?
Somebody asked me a similar question on another podcast, and there's something along the lines of, what is the legacy you want to leave behind? And I think both the legacy question and this question is, like, I want to communicate and to help people understand the value of love. Like, the question that was phrased before was, what legacy do you want to leave behind for your kids? And I said, I want them to understand and know how valuable love is to their lives. And to make a lot of money is great. To build a business that has a lot of impact is wonderful. But to be that place of home, be that place of safety, be that place that everybody knows that when you're around them, that they feel good, they feel safe, they feel, they can be vulnerable. Like, that is, for me, what it means to be, living a superhuman life. When, my family's all around, I know that they're good. And I know that they know being around me is a safe place. And as I walk through life, as I continue to get older and my hair continues to get gray, son of a bitch, it's really just the more that I realize that the ripple of effect of that love that I have poured into other people is coming back to me. That is exactly what it means to be that superhuman life. Like, I love so much. It's so cool to get testimonials from my guys, and like to get the one-off messages like, oh, this happened, business did this, family did this. It's awesome. But when I get the unsolicited message from a wife from one of these men, they're like, I can't thank you enough for what you did with Dan, or what you did with Moises, or what you like. He's a different father. He's a different husband. The way he operates in our home is different. And it's not because I told them about a morning routine. Did we talk about it? Sure. It's not because I taught them about X, Y, or Z over here. It was because we jammed on and understood that being emotional, being vulnerable, and being a loving human being to the people you care about is the best thing you can do every day. And those things are like, cool, I'm good. Again, revenue is great. Business is great. Having more clients and all that stuff is fun. But because I poured into people is really what it's about for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So well said. Nothing to add there, guys, tonight. This so grateful for you, for this Facebook connection that we randomly did at some point down the line. I don't know where that happened, but I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for just sharing your story, your coaching, everything. Guys, you heard it out there. Loving is superhuman. There's nothing more here for us. So, guys, we appreciate you guys so much. If you're out there and this is your first episode, we appreciate you tuning in with us here today. If you've been here before, thank you again for rejoining us. If you want to continue to support us and continue to grow this mission and this message, you can do us in two favors. You can obviously rate, review the show. We love those 5 stars. We love the 4 stars. If we suck and we need to improve, just drop us the 1 star. But most importantly, if there's somebody in your life that needs to hear this conversation, do us a favor with sharing this. But for Nick, Matiash, Frank, Rich, we love you guys, and we'll see you next week.